Howdy, y'all, and welcome to this particular episode where we're going to be talking about collaboration that leads to influence, that leads to leadership, and thinking of ways to be a self-aware software engineer and growing your career as a software engineer. Collaboration is massively underrated in this particular profession. We do tend to leverage that silo work, that lone wolf who can kind of code anything and can solve anything and can fix anything. But here's the real thing. Developers who grow the fastest aren't just the best coders. They are the best collaborators. And if you zoom out a bit, collaboration is actually the foundation for something bigger, and that's influence and eventually leadership. Not the kind of leadership that comes from a title, but the kind where people trust you, listen to you, and they want to work with you. Today, we're going to talk about pair programming, code reviews, and retrospectives. These three things are definitely ways where you can increase your collaboration skills and have that collaboration really help you to increase your influence. Why collaboration matters more than you think. If we start here, thinking about the teams where you have engineers who stand out, they are not just technically strong. They are also those engineers who share context, help others improve, and raise the overall level of the team. Because software development isn't a solo sport, it's a team game. The more you contribute to the team's success, the more people start seeing you as someone that they can rely on. And that's where influence starts. There's a line I really like. You don't get influence from being the smartest person in the room. You get it from making the room better. Pair coding done right. Let's talk about pair programming. I know some people love it. Some people hate it. Some people feel that it means you'll take twice as long to do everything since there are two engineers on a feature. But when it's done well, it's one of the fastest ways to level up, not just technically, but also collaboratively. At its core, pairing is simple. One person is driving, doing the typing, one person is the navigator, and the navigator will be thinking ahead, be trying to consider solutions, reviewing, asking questions, even hitting the Google, or in these days, hitting the AI generator. The thing is, with these two roles, you want to switch regularly. My favorite is to have a test, have one person drive and one person navigate until you write the code that can pass that test. When you write the code that can pass that test, add, commit, push. Other person pulls down that code to update their branch, and we have a new test now, and the navigator and the driver switch, and you write the code that solves that test. It makes the switch feel much more natural than in the middle of a problem to flip over based on some time constraint. If you like time constraints, I won't fight you. Use a time constraint. 20 minutes as a driver, 20 minutes as a navigator, and go back and forth. Totally fine. Use what works for you. But as you switch, what you'll realize, the real value isn't the structure. So whether you go time or whether you go by test or whatever you choose, it's the interaction. Good pair programming looks like thinking out loud, asking, why are we doing this way? Challenging assumptions and sharing mental models. It's not about going faster. It's about building shared understanding. And it actually reminds me of someone I once worked with. I used to pair with someone who was, in my opinion, a better engineer than me. She knew a lot of solutions out of the box. She had more experience in the code base than I did. And yet she would always indulge me if I wanted to try something, if I wanted to experiment a little bit, even if she didn't think it was going to work. I could see on her face like, hey, let's try it. The interesting thing is Sometimes it was successful. Sometimes I found a novel solution. Usually I didn't, but either way, we both ended up learning. She never shut it down. She would always say, let's try it. We weren't just trying to find the right answer. We were exploring the problem space together. And that changed how I think about pairing. It's not about proving you're right. It's about creating space to learn. And that's how you build trust. Because when people feel like their ideas are heard, even the imperfect ones, they engage more and they grow faster. So if you want to get better at collaboration, suggest pairing on complex features, pair with more junior engineers, even pair just to debug something tricky. And remember, if only one person is really engaged, it's not pairing, it's just watching. Next, we're going to talk about code reviews, and we want to talk about how we can take code reviews from gatekeeping to growth. This is where a lot of teams, I think, sometimes can get it wrong. We think of a code review as an opportunity to find something wrong with the code. But the best teams see a code review as, let's improve this together. I had a mentor once who completely changed how I see what a code review is. Whenever I would submit code, instead of just pointing out issues, he would ask questions. Things like, what happens to the time complexity here if this input grows? Is there a way to make this more readable for someone new to the code base? What are the trade-offs that you're making when you use this approach? At first, I found it a little frustrating. I didn't want a bunch of questions. I just wanted to know, is my code good or my code bad? Give me a check so I can merge it and move on to my next feature. I get that. We all feel that way sometimes. But here's the thing. He wasn't just reviewing my code. He was training how I think. He was pushing me to consider readability, time complexity, memory usage, and long-term maintainability. And that stuck with me way more than had he just made some suggestions to rewrite the code. So now when I do code reviews, I try to do the same thing. I don't just say, hey, change this. This is wrong. But what do you think about this approach? Or even better, because if I'm suggesting an approach, that's taking away the creativity from the person who I'm trying to review their code. But have you considered an edge case? What other approaches did you think of while you were writing this? The goal isn't just better code in this PR, it's better engineers over time. And the people who do this consistently, they become the trusted voices on the team. There's a line I love here. The best code reviewers don't just improve code, they improve people. Next, we're going to talk about team retrospectives. This is where teams actually can improve together. It's where teams decide whether they're going to stay the same or actually get better. A good retro is not a complaint session. It is not a blame game. There's a whole reason that we call it a blame-free retro when something occurs. It's a structured way to reflect and improve. At its simplest, we say what went well, what didn't go well, what should we change. But the real skill here is turning observations into action. For example, if you say our deploys are painful, right? Maybe you got a Friday night deploy. Deploys are painful because we're here for 6 hours. We don't get home till 9 o'clock on Friday, right? Instead of saying something like that, you can say, hey, let's add a rollback script and a deployment checklist. Might even suggest, what if we deployed on Wednesday instead of a Friday night? Those things are all actionable, and they can lead to team improvements. I've even seen retros go further than that. On a team that I've been on before, a retro led to some working agreements. We ended up having PRs sitting stale for a while. We ended up having some other issues with some scope creep on code reviews. And so these things came up in retros, and we ended up making some working agreements. And some of the things that we talked about were how quickly we respond to PRs, when we pair versus when we work solo, how we communicate blockers, how we communicate time off. I've got a doctor's appointment tomorrow and someone's expecting to pair with me. Those kind of things need to be communicated. And if they're not established, a retro is a good place to bring those kind of things up and make the suggestions. Small agreements make a huge difference because when expectations are clear, people aren't guessing how to work together, and we had alignment. That's a subtle but powerful form of leadership. If you're the person who helps guide the conversation, keeps it constructive, and turns feedback into concrete changes, people notice. One of the rules that we had with retros as well is we would always have action items. No matter what, there would be an action item. And then after the retro, we would assign who was going to take on the action item to do the thing that we felt like was going to be important based on the retro. When you're that person, though, when you're that person who can keep it constructive and can add, people notice. Because you're not just identifying problems, you're helping to shape how the team works. And that's exactly what leaders do. Let's connect some of the dots. Pair programming builds trust. In my opinion, too, it increases code quality. Code reviews build credibility, and again, increase code quality. And retros build direction. Retros also build some trust, too. If you can bring some things up that are causing pain on the team, that's the time to do it, and that can build some trust. When you consistently show up in those places, you don't need to ask for influence. You naturally gain it. People listen to you more, they involve you in decisions, and they rely on your judgment. And that's when you start stepping into leadership without a title. To close, I do want to say leadership isn't a promotion. It's a pattern of behaviors. And collaboration is where that pattern starts. So if you want to try something practical this week, pair with someone at least once. Leave one really good code review and suggest one concrete improvement on your next retro. Small actions, big impact. Before we get into the ABCs of coding, if this episode gave you something useful to think about, I'd really appreciate if you took a second to follow and subscribe, depending on where you're listening. If you had your own experiences with pair programming, code reviews, or retros, especially ones that helped you grow, I'd love to hear about them. Drop a comment to share your thoughts. That kind of feedback not only helps me improve this show, but it also helps others learn from your experience as well. Thanks for listening, and remember the ABCs of coding. Always be coding, and sometimes always be collaborating well. Thanks, y'all.